Welcome to the Robin's Nest. I got a couple things I want to talk about today as far as NASCAR, rally, Formula One, and some Supercars stuff too. So let's get into it. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody who's helped us with our eBay store, who's bought stuff from us in the past. Really exciting times for us. We finally launched our own legitimate website, which is really cool. So if you would have told me 2 years ago that we'd be in this position now, I would have told you you're crazy. I mean, it's insane. We've been going after it with the eBay stuff, slow and steady, but we finally got to a point, I think, where this is the next chapter for us, and I think it's going to work out. So the link is going to be in the description, but it's also attached to our YouTube store. So our YouTube page, excuse me. So check that out. Like I said, to any and everyone who's helped us out up to this point, I really appreciate it. It's really cool, really cool. So as far as NASCAR goes, we'll talk about that first. They released the memo this morning. I don't know if it was really a memo or if it just got leaked to the press, but NASCAR is looking to cut costs with the truck series. So all the crew members starting next year that are behind the wall, ones that don't service the vehicle when it comes in, they can't have sponsor logos on their suits. So I'm assuming that means that everyone's just going to be wearing plain fire suits? Are they all going to have to be the same color? Or are we going to have just like a group of white, a group of black, a group of gray? I'm talking about fire suit colors. It doesn't really make any sense. And there wasn't really a whole lot of detail that was explained. And how much money exactly is that going to be saving the crews? I mean, I know it's going to save them a little, but I mean, is it really going to make that much of a difference? It's not like you have well, I guess nowadays you do kind of have a different fire suit all the time, depending on the sponsor, because there's no such thing as a year-long sponsorship anymore. Not in this day and age, so, I guess it could theoretically make a difference. I just don't think it's going to make a massive, massive difference, I could be wrong. We'll see. Will Brown, for those who don't know, Will Brown won the Supercars championship this year in Australia. He took Shane's place when Shane came to NASCAR. Will was driving for Erebus at the time, and he left Erebus and went over to Triple Eight, and he took Shane's place, and so he won the championship this year. He announced that he's looking to run 2 races for Richard Childress, RCR. Basically the same program that Brody Kostecki was on. I think it was last year or this year. It was supposed to be this year. That's what it was. And all hell broke loose. We still don't really know the details of what happened with Brody. To start the season with Supercars, he missed a handful of races, and there's like a fallout between him and Erebus. But then for some reason that affected his NASCAR program that he had lined up with Childress, where he was going to run a handful of races, and then he ended up saying, no, I'm not doing that. And so that just turned into a cluster. So Will ended up driving the car, I think at Sonoma, if I remember correctly. He filled in for Brody. Well, he just took Brody's place. He didn't fill in for him. Just took his place. And had a decent run. But now it's going to be, I'm assuming, geared more towards what he wants, working with him, during the season. I guess, I don't know if he'll actually come to the shop or if they'll just talk to him on the phone or how that's going to work. But anyways, so it'd be interesting to see. My thing about that is Supercars needs to do something to keep these guys from leaving and going to NASCAR. Shane was the biggest name in Supercars. Still probably is, honestly, next to Jamie Whincup and Craig Lowndes, but Of course, Peter Brock, but Peter's been gone for a long time now. So, but anyways, as far as current crop of drivers, he's the biggest name out there, and they lost him to NASCAR. You know, they lost Marcus to NASCAR, and then when Marcus left NASCAR and came back to Supercars, basically lost his mojo and ended up hanging it up. But you know, now you got Will dipping his toes in NASCAR, and yeah, you know, and I know Supercars is going to do playoffs essentially next year. It's they're calling it the finals. It's not exactly the same as like NASCAR, but it's not too dissimilar. It's kind of the same thing. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to, you know, I don't know why they're doing it. I mean, I know why they're doing it. They're trying to make more money. I don't see that bearing the kind of fruit that they think it's going to bear, in my personal opinion. Anyone who watches my channel knows how I feel about playoffs and racing. I think it's a joke, and it shouldn't exist. But they got to do something. You know, these guys. Cam Waters, forgot about him too. He came and ran some NASCAR races this year. He drives for Tickford in Supercars and Monster Energy Ford Mustang, and he came and ran some truck races for Thor Sport. And I think a lot of it too is that, you know, from a driver's perspective, you know, yes, you race for trophies. Yes, you race to race. But at the end of the day, you also race to make money. That's just how it is. And as far as that's concerned, NASCAR is the best game in town. I mean, outside of Formula One, I think you make the most money in NASCAR. It's a sad reality, but it's true. So they got to do something. We'll see. We'll see how next year goes. I hope it works out for them. I really do. Because I don't like seeing these guys leave Supercars and go to NASCAR. You know, no more than I like seeing NASCAR guys go to Supercars, which doesn't really happen that often. Every once in a while. I know back in the early teens, they used to have wild card races where they'd bring guys in from different disciplines to run some of the enduro races with the supercar guys, and I didn't really care for it. It's kind of a gimmick, you know, because those guys overall didn't really perform to the level that you would expect them to. But like I said, we'll see. We'll see. Formula One is in it's in Qatar or Qatar or Qatar, however you want to say it. They're in the Middle East this weekend, and I looked at qualifying results, and McLaren looks like they're going to whip everybody this weekend. Mercedes is fast, Ferrari's fast, but surprisingly, Red Bull's kind of mediocre, middle of the road. You know, Sergio, he was out in Q1 again. There's no way on God's green earth that Sergio has a ride with Red Bull next year. There's no way. At least not in the Red Bull team. It may be in their feeder team with AlphaTauri or RB or whatever you want to call it. I don't even see that, really. I mean, he's fallen off a cliff in performance. Big time. Big time. But then Max has kind of too, you know, by Max's standards. Yeah, he won Brazil, but I mean, Brazil is his playground. You could put him out there in a soapbox and he'd outrun those guys. They have lost their way with car development in the second half of the season. So Max is extremely fortunate that they had such a good first half of the season and build that buffer, points buffer, because that's what won him the championship. Because they've been mediocre. But no, it's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend. I think McLaren's going to be tough to beat. I hope so. I love McLaren. It's my favorite team. Has been since I was a kid. You know, and then watching them during I think it was the teens, when they fell off a cliff in performance, and they were awful when they had Honda engines, and it just, no one was happy with each other, and they were fighting, had the infighting going between Honda, between McLaren. McLaren was claiming that Honda's engines weren't good enough, and then they ended up switching engines, and then they still sucked, so it wasn't the engines, it was McLaren. So it's cool to see them running up front and winning races and contending for championships again. Knew it would just be a matter of time. But the main story I want to talk about, it happened before the Thanksgiving break. And by the way, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Almost forgot about that. We kind of sat around the house and didn't do much. My wife's family was visiting some folks in Oklahoma. My family's about 6 hours away. So we just hung out at the house, cooked a bunch of food, sat around and got fat. Really. I think I'm still bloated from eating so much food yesterday. Not good. But no. Story that broke before the break, and I think it was actually last weekend. I just didn't comment about it, but Samuel Pyrie. You gotta forgive me with these names. Like, I'm from Alabama. I'm about as southern as they come. Okay? And some of these European names I have a little hard time with, so. But Sam Pyrie, I'm just gonna say Pyrie. He and his co-driver, they announced that they were gonna split after the season wrapped up. They ended up winning the WRC2 championship. His co-driver, I can't pronounce her name, so I'm not even going to try. But it's a female. They've been together for a while, and like I said, they won the championship together. But he announced at the end of the year or the end of the season, that they're going to split. When he goes to WRC1 next year for Toyota, they're not going to be together. He's going to have a different co-driver. Well, when he announced that, the social media mob attacked him. And we all know why. Because she's a woman. You know, how dare you let go of a woman, especially when she helped you win the championship and whatever. But if you sit back and you look at it, it actually makes a little bit of sense, because they ran some WRC1 rallies together this year. The results were middle of the road. The last rally they crashed out of, I believe it was their last rally. They crashed, flipped over. It was a big gnarly accident. And so, I guess you can kind of see where, as a rally driver, you have to have complete confidence in your co-driver. You cannot question them. You can't be in a position where you're questioning how good they are, if they're up to the task or not, and so on and so forth. And whether she is or not, that's not what I'm saying. That's not my judgment to make. That's his. You know, and he obviously, that's how he felt, that maybe she wasn't up to the standards that he felt like she needed to be. Okay, whatever. Would we have made such a big deal out of this had his co-driver been a man? Would we have done that? I think we all know the answer to that question. No. No. And so what pisses me off to no end is that because you're a woman, apparently that means that you're above being fired. Or being replaced. Whatever you want to call it. That's total nonsense, of course. I'm not dogging her because she's a woman. She did a great job. She's one of the better co-drivers that's out there, in my opinion. But I'm not the one writing the checks. I'm not the one that's doing the hiring and firing. This is my perspective. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you can't be replaced. I'm sorry. That may be cruel, may be crude, may be rude. But it's just the fact. The fact that Sam had to come out on Twitter, I think it was Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and issue a public apology for not being clear enough on why they're parting company. Come on. the whole social media mob thing is so old and so annoying at this point that you can't even replace somebody in motorsports without having to give a detailed explanation because she's a woman. What? Come on. That's nonsense. Dudes get fired all the time. You don't see anybody jumping on social media giving a detailed explanation of why they were... Like, ugh. It's so annoying. It is so annoying. I've been fired from jobs. During the social media era, by the way. I should have pressed my bosses to give a detailed public explanation of why they were firing me. Why not? That's like everyone's go-to now. It is so annoying. And I'm not taking up for Sam really, because I'm not a Toyota fan in the slightest. Okay? It's got nothing to do with being Japanese or anything like that, because I love Japan. It's like my favorite continent outside of America. Favorite country, put it that way, outside of North America. So I've got no problems with that. I don't like the way that the business is run. I don't like some of their marketing tactics, and there's several things about them that I don't care for. And so I'm not on the Sam Pyrie bandwagon just for that reason alone. He's a nice kid. I'm sure he's great in person. Off camera, I'm sure he's super nice. And I hope he's successful. But I'm not taking up for him. It's just my opinion. He replaces co-driver. Big deal. That happens all the time. You should not have to run to social media to explain yourself to the mob. I mean, it's just how it is. That's how it should be. Let me say that. But it's not the day and age we live in. This is 2024, soon to be 25. And the mob is constantly going to attack you no matter what you do. I think in Sam's case, best course of action for him to take is make a decision, stand by it, and don't explain yourself to a bunch of people that you don't need to explain yourself to. A bunch of idiots sitting around on social media behind a keyboard, behind a phone. You don't need to explain yourself to them. If you and your employer are cool with it, that's all that matters. Which also brings me to another point. I would bet dollars to donuts that if you did some digging, one of the other reasons she was let go was due to monetary. Because of money. I'm sure that probably had something to do with it. I could be wrong, but you just don't make brash decisions like that without something like that going on. And it always traces its way back to money.